listening to voices, stories can be strange. It's good to open up to new stories and finding backstories of how people came to be, only to free the minds of what blinds us with only a glance gives us a chance to see people be who they truly are, from silent voices to shining light. Stories that inspire awareness and change. I welcome you to Jessi Stories, Unheard Voices.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tony Stevens, the Assistant Vice President with the American Foundation for the Blind. And Jessi, thanks so much for having me here to talk about our film possibilities. I'm just loving it. I love being here. I love this format.
Thank you.
This podcast. This is great. And the YouTube stuff. So yeah, possibilities. It was a documentary film. Helen Keller worked with us for over 40 years at the American Foundation for the Blind. She was a force to be reckoned with in a lot of ways globally, but at the end of the day too, she was just a regular person, right? She was someone in our office at AFB. We were down on, West 16th Street down in the sort of south side of Chelsea in Manhattan. And she was there, and along with Anne Sullivan and Polly Thompson, who when Anne passed in 1936, everyone knows about Anne Sullivan if they ever read The Miracle Worker or checked out the Oscar-winning film. She was Helen's teacher that broke through to Helen when she was 7 and at the water at the well and was able to tactily sign water in her hand. And it finally broke through. And that was the moment when Helen, who lost her, her hearing and her sight when she was not long after being born, really was sort of living in this isolation. And it was like suddenly, like, I think of like the allegory in the cave, like she came out of this confusion and into this sort of liberation of understanding and knowledge and connection and the ability to communicate finally. And it was really the I guess the ignition that like launched her into really what folks know today is, we're talking about independence so much this year with the anniversary of American independence. There's no question that Helen was like one of the greatest icons of American independence. I mean, she, not just for people with disabilities, but I mean, she was a women's suffragist. She was a huge labor activist, one of the founders of the ACLU. She was appointed under General MacArthur after World War II to be a Goodwill ambassador and traveled to Nagasaki and Hiroshima after the bombs were dropped and really did a lot of work towards peace and outreach in Europe, visited over 39 countries, early on a boat, like traveling across the Atlantic on a boat and then, by plane. I mean, it's crazy to think again that, she was born in horse and carriage days in northern Alabama and post-Reconstruction South. And, she died right before we landed on the moon in the 1960s. And it's an incredible life she lived, thanks in part to Anne. But at the same time, people think of Helen in this like legend greater than life. She had her ups and her downs, and she was a regular person who loved to go walking on Coney Island Boardwalk and feeling the breeze and grabbing a Nathan's hot dog and with mustard, and just really, that was one of her favorite things was a hot dog on from Coney Island. And she was just a regular person like so many of us, which is great because in the documentary film we capture, we call it this 90 hours of footage of people who were blind, deafblind, or low vision, and we were aiming to try to get Helen's impact. So we're 100th anniversary of AFB, and we thought it'd be great to do this documentary about our number one employee that the world knows about. But what we ended up with were these stories of people that were just as authentically themselves. And, one person even in the film says like, it's kind of everyone's a Helen in a sense, that she's kind of a mirror of all of us in that idea that she was just as much human, as much as she's in this pedestal. And I mean, she's interred at the National Cathedral, in the crypt of the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C., like right down from Woodrow Wilson, the president, and other famous Americans and people like that. And she's, sort of remembered as this legend. But to a lot of people, when we learn about her life, it's pretty much like all of us, which is comforting because a lot of people still today are like, how did Helen do it? They think there's this whole conspiracy movement on like Reddit. It's crazy. where they're like, Helen's not real. There's no way she could have done that. I'm like,
Oh my
come talk to like the hundreds of thousands or millions of us that do it every day. You know, it's just Helen was first. So
Yeah, and plus probably the people on Reddit that are saying she wasn't real are lack perspective or are really young or just
yeah, or
lack
they're just part of
perspective.
it. I mean, yeah, there's all kinds of stuff on Reddit that are like not healthy to go down. But,
Yes,
it's
fully
just
agree.
crazy. Like I'm always wondering, like, oh, the same people that are like the moon landing isn't real, and it's just like, all right, whatever. All right, keep
Uh,
thinking that.
you of not believing that.
I'll do my own audio description. He winked. Not what's the opposite of a wink? When you raise your eye, like, all right. I'm trying to do an eyebrow.
Yeah,
Hold
the
on
eye
for that.
raise,
Yeah,
the
the
eyebrow
raised
raise.
eyebrow.
Yeah, I
I
think
feel like there's
so.
an emoji for that. Like, you keep
There
thinking that.
is. There's one where it goes like this. Actually, my partner has used it recently, which is
Okay.
interesting.
All
Where
right.
you like have the finger underneath your chin and then one eyebrow up, and you're like
Oh,
looking up
okay. Yeah.
to the ceiling. That's
Yeah.
the
No. Right.
emoji, so you're not
All
wrong.
right. Cool. All right. Yeah. There you go. I gotta find that one. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's the way I am sometimes with Reddit. Yeah.
I am both ways since the docu-series I was in, Escaping Twin Flames.
Mhm.
I guess the Vanity Fair reporter read Reddit that led to the article she did, which led to everything else eventually piling up onto himself and leading to the docuseries itself. So I have a love-hate relationship with Reddit. Like I see the good of it for when there's actual people on there like asking for help versus the ones saying like Helen Keller isn't real. There's like
Yeah.
two sides to that.
Yeah. I feel like there's still some qualities of what I liked in Twitter 20 or not 20 years, like 17, 18, well, probably 20 years almost now. When it was like sometimes you could get a fact or a nugget, little bite-sized information. But yeah, it is. Yeah, it's becoming the cool place now for all the information discourse. If you don't have a Substack, so
I have a Substack, but I wrote on it once and have never gone back. But I once had a Twitter, but I also left it and never went back. Never going back to Twitter. I'm sticking with Blue Sky. I actually like
yeah,
Blue Sky.
yeah.
It's
I've
nice.
kind of dropped a lot of my social media, which is a shame because it's like I feel I don't know. I find it a little healthier mental wise, for me personally. But I just get upset at getting angry at old friends.
That's understandable. With me, I have friends, including my partner, at least
Mhm.
until we live together in person in LA.
Yeah.
But right now, we just have the use of phone and internet
Yeah.
of staying in contact. And I have made friends. I still have a lot of friends on here, even those such as yourself that have been on the podcast. Like I tend to follow on social media and keep up with. I,
I
I
got to start doing social media again. And now I feel obligated.
if you feel obligated, then don't do it. You have to do it because you want to. If you
True.
feel an
True.
obligation, that's not a good reason to do it, in my personal
Yeah.
opinion. You got to do it because you
Yeah.
want to and because it feels good to you.
I'm just I grew up a bass player. I'm a jazz music like you know well a lot of people are going into like Paralympic sports like goalball and stuff, which is adaptive sports for the blind. I was like, I'm just gonna play this bass and be cool and try to grow a goatee when I'm 15 years old. And it made me kind of always stay in the back of the stage. And it's always weird to do social media where it's like, which is weird. Like even doing the documentary film, like there's moments that I'm in the film where I'm kind of the one that threads the needle between these major. As we were interviewing all these people, we got these different narratives that started to resonate. Like education wise, like what was it like the difference between schools for the blind, which is where you would send your child to like a residential school where you literally would live away, like like English boarding school kind of thing, and learning in your school, like mainstream, right? And like all these different things. And so my job was coming on camera to sometimes thread the needles of Helen's work in this space and then the stories that you're about to hear in the documentary from the many people that are blind or deafblind or have low vision that we interviewed. And it was so weird to sort of be like it's like taking a bass solo. I'm not used to it. It's like stepping out on stage and there you are, the world to see. But it's been cool. I've gotten used to ignoring myself whenever I talk, much in the way my children do every day.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. But I like your voice. You like have a soothing radio almost narrative. Like voice acting voice. That's what your voice reminds me of. And I think that's
Thank you.
cool. You play bass. I like bass a lot. That's what I listen to. I played drum set in the past. I could
Oh,
definitely
yeah.
pick that back up again easily. I played it for a good portion of my life. But
If I'm out in LA, we should jam because the bass player and the drummer are always the best together. So,
well, in a year. Yeah.
yeah,
When
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
in LA, let's do it. I like
Are
that
you in
plan.
LA now? Where are you at? I thought you mentioned LA earlier.
I'm right now in Colorado,
Oh,
but
you're in
in a
Colorado. Okay.
year with my partner, she is there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't know when I'm
So
getting.
I'm all
That's
for
scary.
jamming.
Yeah.
Because I do love jazz. I love jazz history of where it began, since jazz began on the fields of slaves, pretty much. Backs of
Yeah.
slaves began with the
Yeah.
holler. I learned
Yep.
this in college because I took jazz. Well, I took every music class you can name in college, high school, just like Shakespeare too. And yeah, that's one of my favorite parts. Is it all began with a holler, so there was only voice, there was no music, no anything. And then as it progressed in time, we first got bass, then we got guitar, then we got bass drums before we got drum set, and then we got the hi-hat. It was a gradual through the years before it became what it
Yeah.
was, and
Yeah.
then it became voice and the instruments hollering back and forth to each other, just like
Yeah. The call and response, and
yes,
the fact that a lot of it was improvised. It was more of just what was going on in yourself at that time. But yeah,
correct.
it reminds me too. I'm a passion I do have is being on the water. I find water very therapeutic, and I'm a sailor as well. I live on Baltimore Harbor, like right off the harbor. I used to live on the harbor. I lived on a sailboat for a while, but it's the old sea shanties too. I love, which are the same thing. They're songs that were sung on the deck of ships for a lot of time, indentured servants that were on these boats, that would be sailing across the Atlantic, and it's massive labor to hoist these massive at the time like cloth sails, and so, super heavy and on these old tall ships. And I love just that there's something about music that is sung in harmony for people trying to get through something that's a hard time, which is of course obviously what blues and jazz was born out of, as well as other forms of communication within it, right? The things that people are saying sometimes are coded and stuff, but I love all that stuff. I love that old music.
I love old music too. I love old
Mm.
everything. I actually went to school to become a DJ, but I did drop out eventually. But
Mhm.
also losing my home to the fires played a role in that too. But
Oh,
the Marshall fires. But I still
okay.
have my
Yeah.
music passion, and technically my writing falls into. So actually, my last disabled friend I talked to on the podcast, who will be before you'll come right after her. She, McKenna, spelled the Hawaiian way. She writes poetry, but she also does music, and she also writes scripts and musicals. She's working on a musical. You
That's
two
cool.
both fall in line perfectly together, so I'm glad
Yeah.
that we have the lineup going that way. But
Yeah. Very
poetry, like I write poetry, and I've written a song. I count the beginning of my podcast. No, I don't sing, but I did at least speak. It was like spoken poetry, which is music, for the beginning
Mhm.
of my podcast. I wrote those lyrics. I even write lyrics by Jessi Hersey in the description. Poetry can be
Yeah.
children's books. I wrote Who You Are some of my children's books that I wrote. Poetry, as McKenna and I both talked about, poetry is multidimensional. You can do many things with it. You can write books, you can write lyrics, you can even write a script. I wasn't aware you could write a script. I learned that from McKenna. You can write fantasy from poetry. I didn't even know there was a subtext fantasy that you could do of that.
Oh, it seems like we're spending $200 million in the marketing of the Odyssey. The film, Christopher Nolan's film that's coming out this summer, and it's a sung poem, right? It's a movie based on a poem that was sung by a blind man. I'll add. Thank you very much. You're
Yes.
welcome, world.
Yeah, rep, baby.
You can send those checks to any person that you run into that has a white cane or a guide dog. No, I'm just teasing.
They should still, though.
Yeah, they should still. Yeah, support the
They should do it. Yeah, support.
your local agency supporting people with, Centers for Independent Living or agencies for the blind or whatever. No,
Correct.
but it is, and Homer adapted the stories, they say. But yeah, but it was a sung poem, a really long, which is incredible that when you think that we can't even get through TikTok now. And back in the day, 3,000 years ago it was like sitting around the fire and everyone listening to, someone sing the songs in ancient Koinoi Greek of Odysseus and Penelope and Telemachus or Telemachus. There, I
I
got it.
can't say that word. It's
Yeah,
hard.
Telemachus.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it's cool that it is, music, I think it is a lot of ways um just as therapeutic for I'm curious in maybe your experience with the disabilities that you described, like, things that kind of calm for me when I get stressed, it's music is almost a sanctuary, right? It takes my main sense that I rely upon and sort of focuses it and then does something else in the brain. I'm not sure what. I'm not a biologist or a neurosurgeon, but yeah, it is very for me. And I guess other people have other ways to sort of deal with the stresses of their disability, the challenges and things like that. But for me, it's always been music. So
With me, because my day job, in fact, is I work with kids and adults with disability. And music is, yes, one of my unwinding ways and kind of a way to make myself feel like I'm having a break doing nothing. It doesn't matter what the music is. Well, sometimes it does. Some music I can't do. Some music does stress me out. But with me, I also have to have this is one of my special interests, Pokemon. So
Mhm.
Dragonite, like something to hold, something to rub. And like I've been
Yeah,
doing my
yeah,
entire time talking to you, I've been doing my gnome pen rubbing. I just have to
yeah.
have something to keep myself monitored, or I do the same thing as a lot of the kids I work with, which is just walk back and forth. Actually, it's been fun lately this summer. I've been walking back and forth with a lot of them. I used to not have someone else to walk back and forth with, and now I do during the summer. It's been pretty great to be at the
That's
same
cool.
level as the kids I work with and walking
Yeah.
back and forth to regulate yourself.
No. Yeah, that works. Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
But music is also mine too. I love the lyrics. I love sometimes just listening to the background music. What about with you? Are you more of music, lyric, or both?
I am more music. The lyrics. In fact, I heard a great interview with Billy Joel the other day on a YouTube channel, and he was talking about how sometimes the words don't matter as much as the sound of the words, the consonants and the vowels. He was talking about the song I always liked because it's my namesake Anthony's song, "Moving Out," and it's like, working too hard can give you a heart attack, and he's doing the that sound, and how he tried to show it like other ways you could do it, and it made total sense. Where it's like sometimes it doesn't even matter about the words; it's the consonants and the vowels where they themselves are like musical notes. And sometimes I hear melody lines that feel like they're words, right? Like in kind of and like John Coltrane, like hear almost what sounds like haunting words sometimes in it, or Billie Holiday, you know, where it's just the visceral sounds of the instrument or the human voice making sound. It's like it's communicating without a dictionary that defines the word itself, but the mood is definitely carried through. So yeah,
I really like that.
yeah,
That's really cool. I love your description of it too.
yeah,
And
yeah.
you have a book, right? You should definitely advertise that.
I don't have a book.
Oh, you should have a book.
I have an
Just because
unpublished
I
book.
thought of it.
I have an unpublished book.
Then
I
you
have
need to
lots of
publish your
rejection
book.
letters from publishers. If any publishers are here wanting to publish a book, but it's yeah, I have written for newspapers and stuff over the years and produced in radio and other formats. Um,
Self-publish your book. Who cares about the rejections? They're
I
stupid.
guess I could. I don't know. There's that part of me. I went to like journalism school. I was either my dad was like, you can either do. I mean, it wasn't his choice per se, but it was like I had a music scholarship opportunity to go do jazz, to study jazz. And then I had a journalism scholarship. And in the back of my head, I was like, my mother wanted me to do jazz, but like every child, I'm trying to get my father's attention. He's no longer with us, but I was like trying to get that. So I was like, I'll go do journalism. That's respectful. I can always play music on the side. And I'm glad I did because it got me into communications and everything. But I'm that writer. So all this goes to say is like I'm that old school writer that's like, I have friends that have self-published books and I have thought about it, but I don't know. It's just like still maybe there's a publisher and agent out there that just feels like, I don't know. I was slow to blogging too when blogging came out decades ago, because I was like, the newspaper. I was like, oh, magazines and newspapers. And what are these blogs? that kind of thing. So,
Well, I think your story should get out there. That's something I believe strongly in. My company that I have, that's not fully done yet. We're not taking
mhm.
clients or anything, but it's technically with my partner. Oneness Love Publishing, it's like in every aspect. Like I would definitely do the self-publishing aspect through my company because I know how it works. I've self-published
Hmm.
like 6 books, 5
That's
through my
cool.
company, 1 was through another one. You have to be really careful because there's vanity in publishing, which is both combined of traditional and self. The part about traditional that I don't like, because when I was younger, my poetry that I wrote, yes, it was published in magazines, newspapers, but that was because of my teachers. Those got in magazines and
Mhm.
newspapers, but it was eventually published in a poetry book, but I had like no rights to it. I didn't even know the name of the
Oh,
book. So when people ask me anything, I don't have any information for you. Thanks for asking. It was when I was
sounds
like
like
13 years old.
the
But
college bands I knew in college radio that were like, "Oh yeah, we'll sign on the line. Sure. Where do we get famous and rich and
yeah, no. I
and
don't like traditional as much. I guess some of my author friends have found good traditional, like only
Mhm.
one, Rebecca Thorne, who I had on here.
Oh yeah.
Um, she's the only one I can think of that's had a good traditional publishing company, but I haven't met anyone. Well, maybe there's been more like Natalie, maybe, who's a VO voice actor.
Mhm.
I'm trying to think of like there's been a few, but I wouldn't ever want to be traditional because I like owning my rights and no matter what, if you're going traditional, you're technically giving up 75 to 80 to 90% of your rights. And
No, I
you
know it's
can
pennies on the dollar. I know that from music. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And
I
it all
don't know. There's still that allure of like Random House or Penguin, like that kind of thing.
ew, Random House and Penguin are the worst. I don't recommend.
No, I know, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like those are the things that you grew up with. Scholastic Press. I had a job in New York City for a while, and we were in the same building as the Harry Potter, like Scholastic Press down in Soho, and it was just cool to go in and it's just be like, it didn't smell like books like I thought it would. I thought it smelled like an old library on their floors, but it did not. But it was still cool to be like, walking into the building because this was, you know, 20 years ago when Harry Potter was huge. So it is,
Oh,
I don't know. So
that's pretty cool. You have like
yeah,
fun facts.
now you
Well,
know.
no. And since I know you have to go to another thing very soon, if you could let people know where they can follow you on the
Oh,
socials
that's a
that
good
you do
idea.
like to go on. Like,
Well, let's do this. I do tell my story some in the film, along with a lot of other people that are blind, and I'm here to, really. It's not about me. It's that I'm the bass player, right? I'm like Ringo Starr and the Beatles. I'm just happy to be here, I'd say.
face.
But yeah, I mean, afb.org/possibilities is where you can find out more about the film. And you can get in touch with me there too. I mean, I'm, communications@afb.org. But the film is on like Apple TV and Amazon Prime. We're at libraries through Canopy and Biblio Plus. We're on Tubi, the Roku channel app. It's all over the place. We're in 63 countries. Like I said, we launched on Helen's birthday on June 27th, and it's all around the world. And it's great. It's open audio description, so it's inclusive for all audiences. We brought the team in early, like I said, and they just did a fantastic job. And I'm just, yeah, thanks, Jessi. It's been cool to connect and meet you and dig what you're doing. And yeah, we're just excited that this film is out for people. So that I think my hope is you'll agree as well. Like we need more authentic voices from our community, really breaking it down to what it's really like.
Fully agree. I'm fully with that. I'm, yeah, working on a couple documentaries myself, an autism
Mm.
one, which I hope my director comes on here eventually. But I'm
Yeah.
assistant director. But yeah, I'm all for the more voices. I'm going to be watching possibilities, and I hope everyone listening, watching, how whatever form of getting this media from Tony, I want everyone to go follow where he said. You can even get in contact with him, as he said. And let's continue to educate people on wow, my brain, inclusive works and including everyone, especially in the industry of entertainment. I count documentary as entertainment because that's what
Yeah.
they count it as. But of
Yeah.
true stories,
We didn't even get into the all the crew we had that were blind too, like engineers and writers and sound people. Yeah. So yeah, inclusive all the way, hands down. Preach it.
preach it, heck yeah. And the fact that everyone was, like you said, engineer, everyone in the behind the scenes were blind. So
Yeah,
please
not
support.
everybody. We not everybody, but
Uh,
a large number. So yeah.
large
More
percent.
than the industry ever has seen it that I know of for a blind crew. So yeah, so
Let's change this industry, baby. We got this.
So there's room for all of us.
Yes, I fully agree with that. And thank you so much for being on here, Tony. And I hope we stay in contact.
Sounds awesome, Jessi. Yep, will do. Take care. Thanks.
You too. Let me stop. Thanks so much for being here, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode with many more to come. If you'd like to help support and grow the podcast and even the YouTube channel, please not only follow, like, subscribe, but please leave a review on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere you listen to this podcast. Thanks so much for being here. Until next week, on Wednesday at 7 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Peace. Catch you later.